as all we all know, the Montessori Child book is the third book. And is it essential to read the first two books before we start reading the Montessori Child? Or we can the Montessori Child serve as an introductions? How is it?
Yeah, you don't need to read the ones before. So if you have a child between the ages of 3 and 12 years old, or even an adolescent, then go straight to the Montessori Child book. You have everything in that book that you need. But if you have a child between from conception to 1 year old, then the Montessori baby is the best place to start. And between 1 and 3, then I would go to the Montessori toddler first. But yes, it's not prerequisite to read the first two. You've got everything in the Montessori Child that you need.
Okay, so it's already complete in one book, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to add that the way that we've written all the books, actually, you don't even have to, you can read the whole book from back to back, which is amazing, and there's so much richness in there. But you can even just choose a chapter or choose a page. Every part of it has something that you can take away and you can implement immediately. So it's not written to make you feel like if you don't read everything, you won't get everything that you need. We also organize the table of contents and also the index in the back, so that if there's something that you're particularly interested in, you can just look it up and go to that page. So you can read the whole book or you can read a section of it. And either way, you'll get something that will help you with your parenting and that you can apply immediately.
So, it's interesting when in this book you combine the age group 3 up to 6 and 6 up to 12 in one single book. Why you put it together? Because you can make 2 books actually, yeah?
We can. So actually initially we had thought about having a 0 to 3 book, a 3 to 6 book, and a 6 to 12 book. It was really, when we presented it to our publisher, they initially thought, oh, maybe too much to have a 3 to 6 book and also a 6 to 12 book. And so we thought, yeah, let's take another look at it. And when we took a look at it and started writing the book, we actually found that this was a good way to organize it, because many times by the time you have a 3 to 6 year old, you might also have an older child, or when you have an older child, you might have a younger child. So we wrote it in such a way that if you have multiple children, or you can follow your child from 3 until 12. Many of the things apply, but there are like slight changes or slight modifications that you make as your child moves from the first plane to the second plane. So initially it was actually the publisher that suggested we make it into one book, but then we found that it was a good way to organize it.
Okay, that's a very good point. And Simon mentioned that there is a adolescent years chapter in this book. So why you guys find it important to include it in this book? Because it's kind of bonus, yeah? The adolescence chapter here.
We found it really important to have the adolescent chapter, because as you go through these ages and stages, you get to the point where your child's getting older, they're being more independent, they're spending more time out of the house, and you're like, how am I going to continue this Montessori approach as they get older? And we wanted to include it in that book, because to buy another whole book for the adolescent years, not that many people are going to buy another whole book. So we really wanted to make sure that parents felt prepared, that the information is already out there, how it can look in a really positive way, as well as to show the adolescent in a new light, because adolescents, like toddlers, have a very bad reputation for being difficult and those kind of things. And when you read that chapter, you really feel like, no, actually, this is the same as what we've been doing in the past and how we've approached this relationship, this connection with our child. And it just gets refined, like an approach to technology, how that would grow with your child as well. Because if you only focus on the 3 to 12, you feel like, okay, what comes next? And it's missing something. So that's why we found it so important.
I think it's always helpful to know where you're going. When you know where you're going, it helps you orient yourself, and you can observe the signs. Like, even though when your children are 3 to 12, when they start to transition, we always say that transition is not a switch. It's not on their 12th birthday they will automatically become adolescents. Some children start to show the signs that they're changing before they turn 12. Some of them after 12. But if you have read and you know some of the things to look for, when you start to notice those signs, you know what they are and you know how to respond. You know what to prepare for. You know the preparations that you need to make. You know the foundations that are set earlier on that you need to work on to prepare your child to be the best they can be in the next stage. So we feel like it's always good to be able to see where the child came from, as well as where they're going.
Wow. Okay. There is another question from Byung Saka from Lisa Malawi. This book is intended for children aged 3 up to 12. So if I want to introduce Montessori to 9 up to 10 years old child who never gets any Montessori education before, is it going to be difficult? And is this issue discussed in this book or not?
I feel like we talked about this a little bit earlier, but just to reinforce, it is not it's always easier. Everything is easier when you start early, right? But it's not particularly difficult to introduce it to a 9 or 10-year-old, because the way that we have approached Montessori, or we have offered it in the book, is to help you understand your child at each stage. So if you were going to introduce Montessori to a 9 or 10-year-old, when you read the book, you would understand what would be happening with the child around that age. And with everything, we try to explain how you would apply it for a child at each stage. So it wouldn't be harder than, for a younger child. You would just read and understand. And then with everything, it takes time. It's a change of the way that we view the child. It's a change of the way we interact with the child. So it might feel different, and whenever you're making change, it feels different. Hard is relative, but I feel like it's doable. It's just a new way of viewing your child, your role, and the way that you interact with your child. So I don't think that it's hard. I think that the way that we present it, they're just little changes that you would make.
And I think that the child doesn't find it hard either, because they actually really enjoy this respectful approach. They're like, it's less bossing them around, and they have more autonomy and more involvement in the family. And there are higher expectations, perhaps, that, they're meant to be responsible for taking care of their things. But actually, when they see the benefit of that too, like, oh, I really am learning things and I can do this for myself, then yeah, I agree with Junnifa that it doesn't have to be hard either. It's probably harder to break patterns as the adult than it is for us to, for the child to take the changes on board.
And there is another question from Uchi. Uchi, you can turn on your camera.
Hello. Hi, Simone and Junnifa. This is the husband of Uchi, actually. Yeah, we are from Semarang. Actually, I want to ask about the second period, actually. From the toddler and the baby, we already apply Montessori for the 3 of our kids, and it's already successful, actually. We thanks for the Montessori. Then we realized after my first daughter reached the age of 12, we got difficulties to apply anything related to Montessori. And also the second son, he was 8 years old. He also turned into a different direction. The attitude, the behaviors is quite the opposite of the first stage of their Montessori. So we got confused because both of us handle the 3 kids by ourselves. We have no housemate or maybe no relative to help. So we got quite stressed. We quite stressed to handle 3 of them. Can you share how to handle the 3 of them that already enter the next age? The next level. I'm going to teenager, something like. Thank you, Junnifa and Simone.
I think I will start, and then maybe Simone will add to this. I will talk. I think what stands out to me, I should share that I also have 4 children. 3 of them are currently in the second plane because there's my first 3 children are 10, 9, and 7. So I can understand, because it can be a switch if you don't know what to expect. So usually in the first plane of development, the children are very different. They are calm, they are orderly, they are very even respectful. They're just very different. And then they get into the second plane, they are quite messy, they like to play and socialize. They can come off as rude and harsh and mean. And if you're not expecting this, then it can be a shock. But this is actually normal. Dr. Montessori talks about the changes that happen as children move from one plane of development to the second plane of development. So I think the first thing that I would say that would help is just reading up and understanding the changes that happen as children change, so that you know what is normal and what is not normal. Sometimes it's normal, and then when it's normal and we're fighting against it, then it can feel very hard. But when you know what to expect, then you know how to respond. I think the other thing is that I would say is responsibility. Often as children get older, they actually can be responsible for more. But for whatever reason, we don't give them things to be responsible for. And then they fight, or they are fighting for that independence that they want. They want to be able to be part of making decisions. So maybe if you're making a schedule for your home, or you're assigning tasks that they can do, because they can help around the house so that it doesn't feel overwhelming to you, but you can involve them in those conversations. Earlier in the meeting, Simone talked about family meetings. I think those are really helpful for when your children are older. Having a meeting where you sit down together and you have a conversation about what the expectations are in your house, so that you get their buy-in. You guys can agree together. In our house, we have dinner at 6 p.m. Who's responsible for setting the table? Who's responsible for clearing up the table? In our house, this is how we interact with each other. This is what we do at bedtime. I don't think that you need to have too many rules, but just enough. And one, making sure that all of you agreed on it together. Maybe you can write it down somewhere that you can reference it. And then those meetings can be they can be consistent. Like, so maybe you can have them every week or every other week, so that you can go back, you can talk about what is working and what's not working. And it's a way that you're carrying everybody along and it feels like a family. I hope these are helpful. I don't want to go on for too long, but these are some things that come to mind that might be helpful.
And then for the 12-year-old, they're moving to the third plane of development, which is actually a parallel plane to the first plane of development. And there's a lot of hormonal changes, psychological changes, and physical changes that are going on. So they actually, Dr. Montessori calls them as being as fragile as a newborn. And so whilst they appear very tough, they can be very sensitive. So we really need to, again, keep using positive language with them, getting them on board. And yes, there's fragile, but at the same time, they also can take responsibility. So they need to find things that feel bigger than them and that they can put their mind to. So if there's a cause that they're interested in, that they join another group of children, or a group that are, wanting to work on the environment, or to raise money for a charity, or something that's big like that. They need some responsibility rather than just lying on the couch and us taking them in the car to different sports and things like that. So I think the teenagers, we need to be gentle with them, but there's also there's something called valorization. They need to feel like they have a belonging, they're important. And valor also means they often take more risks as well, but finding ways to channel that risk-taking behavior in more safe ways. So you're continuing this relationship with them that you started when they were toddlers. You said it was going well. Then go back and have the same connection and relationship like that as when they were toddlers, because there's less like activities that you're kind of preparing. Environment, you're kind of will be looking at how can I set up the environment so they can have success. So if I remember when my son was a teenager, we just needed to write a note on the front door. This was his idea, to write light and locks, so that he remembered to lock the door and turn off the lights if he was the last one to leave. So we were scaffolding, giving them always a positive way, like, okay, that went wrong, how can we learn from it and how can we make it better, as opposed to that old way we used to do it, which was punishing them or threatening them or bribing them. Yeah, so it's still the same skills, but they just each all have different needs at different ages. But you can do it. You can definitely do it.